he said, "Your voice of great thunder being the creator." Um, he said, but he also reminded me, he says, "But at home, you're just big thunder, because you're not supposed to have a big head about this, you know." And so there's always that humor side, of course. I love it.
Welcome to the Kindling Fire. My name is Troy Mangum. God is preaching a sermon to the world through people's lives. People's experience, history, and testimonies all point to some amazing attribute of God that you too can experience. I interview revolutionaries, fire starters, and troublemakers. This podcast is here to be a voice of encouragement in your life. A voice that says, with God you can, and with God you will step into the abundant life. So let's get rolling. This is a reading of John 3:16 and 17 from the First Nations Version Bible, just released in August. The Great Spirit loves this world of human beings so deeply, He gave His Son, the only Son who fully represents Him. All who trust in Him and His ways will not come to a bad end, but will have the life of the world to come that never fades, full of beauty and harmony. Creator did not send His Son to decide against the people of this world, but to set them free from the worthless ways of the world. You're going to be hearing from the main translator, the lead translator of the First Nations version, coming up next. So today on the Kindling Fire, I have Terry Wildman on the show, and it is a real honor to have you. Thank you for coming on my podcast.
It feels good to be here with you today, so thank you for inviting me.
So Terry, I've come to know about Terry through the First Nations version of the New Testament, as well as the creation story. It's the very first of its kind, which is a Native and Indigenous peoples translation. And we're going to get into some of that, but that was just released. When was the First Nations version of the New Testament released?
August 31st.
Yeah, so I am so excited to be able to talk to you just right on the heel of that. Let me tell the audience a little bit about yourself. So Terry Wildman, he is part of the Ojibwe tribe out of the Great Lakes region, as well as the Yaqui out of Mexico, right?
That's right.
And so he was the lead translator and general editor of the First Nations version of the New Testament and creation story. He also serves as the director of spiritual growth and leadership in Native Intervarsity. He's a founder of Rain Ministries and previously served as a pastor and worship leader. And you and your wife, Darlene, live in Arizona. So did I miss anything?
Only that we live on the traditional lands here in Arizona of the Pima and the Tohono O'odham. So I want to give that land acknowledgement and acknowledge the people who Creator put here first.
Yeah. So let's get into this First Nations version. First off, I just love to hear about sort of how these things come to be. This is a very, to me, very precious translation. My audience knows I'm a Lumbee Indian, and my mom's Lumbee Indian, and I'm part of that tribe. And God has really reawoken my Native heritage just really in the last 2 years in a very spiritual way, where He's kind of guiding me into learning more about the tribe and learning more about what He has for me in my Native roots. And so this is a very personal topic for me. And I'd love to, obviously we're going to do a lot of questions today, but I'd love to just hear from you, Terry. How did this First Nations version actually come to be?
Well, my wife and I were serving as missionaries on the Hopi Indian Reservation in northern Arizona, among a very traditional, very beautiful people. And the more I lived there, the more I realized I had so much to learn, even though I had learned things about my own Native heritage and my ancestry and my people. The Hopi were a completely different people, although we shared some common values. So living with the Hopi, my wife and I lived there for 5 years. And we served a couple of years with Youth with a Mission, and then we served 3 years pastoring the Sunlight Mission on Second Mesa. And when I was a pastor there, I was looking at our storeroom at the church, and I found a box and I opened it up, and it had Hopi New Testaments written in the Hopi language that had been created by Wycliffe. And I actually got to meet the actual translator and talk with him that did that Hopi New
Wow.
Testament. But while I was there, but one thing I was so excited, I was going to take it around and get people to read to me out of it, right? But guess what? I couldn't find anyone that could read it.
Wow.
So these Bibles weren't being used, and they were just kept kind of in storage, and that really piqued my curiosity in a lot of ways. We would sing songs in church from the Hopi language, but I found out also that as people were singing these songs, I said, well, how does that translate? In other words, what are the actual words we're singing there to these hymns? And they didn't know. And so it was an awakening for me. And I thought, wow, in the ministry, we did ministry in the local Hopi jail. We got men into a talking circle and we shared. And we were using the NIV, the New International Version. We jokingly called the New Indian Version because all the churches were using it up there. But what happened was I started working with some of the guys there, and the idea came to me to kind of reword the scriptures. I noticed that a lot of the guys weren't connecting, even though it was in English, and NIV is a pretty simple, plain English. But I noticed they weren't connecting significantly. So I started rewording them, and I would try these rewordings out on some of the guys in our talking circle and things like that. And they really perked up. And they started listening, and they started interacting more with the scripture. And then I would ask them, well, how would you say it, in English? And the reason that we're doing English is because the history in the boarding schools and all across the nation, while Wycliffe and other missionaries were translating the language into the native languages, right? Another branch of the church was taking that language away from our people.
Gosh,
and not allowing our people to learn those languages.
Yeah. So I'm going to interrupt you right there because I
Sure.
absolutely know enough about Native history in America that a lot of people don't understand. When you say the boarding schools, that was a whole movement, and people are not even aware. Most white folks are not aware of what we're even talking about. Can you just briefly say what that is for the audience?
Sure. I would say it was toward the 1800s, after the Indian Wars were over.
Yeah.
And the United States was trying to figure out what to do with all these Native people. Many of them were still speaking their own languages. They were living traditionally. They were put on reservations where they had to stay. At that time, they couldn't legally leave the reservation without being arrested. And so someone came up with the idea, well, let's assimilate the Native people. Let's teach them English. Let's have them dress in regular clothes. And they tried to do that with the adults, but it didn't work. So they said, well, we got to go for the children. Mm-hmm. And so they started a policy where they took children into boarding schools. Mostly they were taken by force. They were sometimes taken voluntarily. Some of our Native people were starving and in very bad shape, and they wanted their children to survive. And so they allowed them to go to the boarding school so that they at least have food to eat and a way to survive. But in these boarding schools, the motto was kill the Indian and save the man. And so they attempted to strip completely our language, our culture from us, and make us into their image, the image of the Euro-American person,
right? Yeah.
And integrate them into society. And so these boarding schools functioned for 50, 60 years, and sometimes even longer in some places. So that's the idea behind that.
Yeah, I mean, it was an indoctrination, and it was an
Absolutely.
indoctrination, yeah, that unfortunately the church
Yes.
thought this was good. That's also the time period, and you were with Youth with a Mission, and I actually was with my family, and I were with Youth with a Mission, and it's sort of a time period when missions was not just gospel, kingdom of God, it was our cultural ways plus God.
Yeah.
And it was a bad mix, and it really has caused a lot of hurt. I'm sorry. I hopefully I didn't distract you from what you were going through. So you discovered these Bibles, you did it in the English language, they started to resonate with it, right?
Yes,
In
I
the
started
circles.
rewording into English, and even having them help me and give me ideas. And I started taking some of my favorite scriptures and doing this, and eventually that led to because it was being positively received. It led to my wife and I were songwriters, recording artists, and so we did a CD called "The Great Story from the Sacred Book," and that CD has 18 chapters, and it goes from creation to Christ. And it uses this rewording that we were beginning to develop way back in 2000. This would have been 2007
Yeah.
that we created this CD, and we put music in the background, and I was the narrator, and we submitted that CD to the Native American Music Awards, and it won. It won Best Spoken Word
Wow.
that year. And so we thought, wow, here's the story of the gospel reworded for Native people, but and told in a Native way that won the Native American Music Award. So we felt like, wow, there's something here. There's something about this. But I still wasn't yet fully convinced that I was supposed to, I was looking for someone who was doing this. I
Hmm.
did a lot of research and couldn't find anyone who was doing this. Some people says you can't do that. You know, there's there's too many different tribes. There's hundreds and hundreds of different tribes and everything, and so there's no way to kind of in a general way speak to all of them. But the thing we learned was there is a way to do that,
Yeah.
and we've been doing it for years. And the English language that was forced on us became a common language that we all speak now.
Hmm.
And so that common language, that colonial language, helped us learn from each other and speak to each other. And we have these gathering called powwows. And at the powwows, we come together and we tell our part of what we do there is we do our dances and we tell our stories. And so we learned our stories from each other and we learned our commonalities. And so from that idea, we felt like there could be an English version worded to relate to Native people, but the idea was to decolonize the scripture, and if you're going to share Jesus with Native people, you can't just begin with Jesus.
Hmm.
There's some baggage around even the name of Jesus.
Hmm.
There's a bad history, the forced assimilation, the churches that got involved in doing that, and
In the name of Jesus.
in the name of Jesus. And so um, over the years, my wife and I, when we were done pastoring at Hopi, we began traveling. We traveled for 10 years. And I took these little portions of scriptures and I began to share them at events that we would do, sometimes at powwows, sometimes at tribal centers, sometimes in churches, on reservations. And the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. You say it in English the way we're thinking it in our language. What Bible were you reading from? And we said, there's not a Bible like this. And they said, well, there should be. So eventually I couldn't find anyone, and other people began to pray with me and liking what I did and began to pray and confirm to me that you're the one that's supposed to do this. You've got the heart, you've got the passion, you've got the vision. You've already started doing it. So why, you
Why
should
not
do
go
it.
all the way? One of the things, and I don't know where I've heard it, I might have heard it from YWAM, was the idea of the heart language.
Yeah.
that term heart language, in the heart language of the people. And what's your understanding of that? Like, what does that make you think of?
Well, heart language just it's for cultures, it's the language you were born into.
Hmm.
And so in our native heart languages would be those original languages we spoke, but we're not speaking for the most part.
Right.
We're not speaking those languages. So is there a way to take the rhythm and feel and wording of those heart languages translated into English? Can we capture that? And we've been told we've done a pretty good job at it. I can't say it's perfect,
Yeah.
but in any way, and it's not. We're not trying to say this is done by all Native Americans representing all Native Americans.
Right.
It's done by a group of Native people. I was the lead translator. I was the vision person for it. I was the project manager. But we had over 50 Native people involved in this translation from many different tribes. And
Yeah.
this is our gift to our Native people and to the dominant culture out there. But I finally said yes to it. And after I said yes to it, it was time to kind of begin it. So I started a Facebook page. I created a website. I said, and then I started translating the gospel to Christmas story,
Mm.
and created a book as a test to get this book out there, the birth of the chosen one, and it was really well received,
Mm.
and it helped make more and more people aware that we're working on this project. We're going to do the New Testament. So then I did a second book. It was called When the Great Spirit Walked Among Us. And I took the four Gospels and made them into and harmonized them, which is impossible, but you do it anyway.
There is something called the harmony of the Gospels where
There
they
is.
chronologically go through it. Yeah.
And so we harmonized all four Gospels into one story,
Mm.
and then reworded them in this native kind of English vernacular. And that was really well received. Matter of fact, Crew Nations began to use it in their training, their staff training, and different things to introduce cultural ways to bridge the cultures and things like that. And then I started the First Nation version translation, and that's when it was in 2015, and that's when the Bible translation organization called One Book, part of Wycliffe Global Alliance,
Yeah.
found my website accidentally and reached out to me and said, how would you like some help to
Yeah.
do what you're doing?
That's beautiful.
And then it started. We partnered with them, and the new and they helped us. They gave us expertise, but their philosophy was the indigenous people do the translating. We just do the support and help, and we do some fundraising for you, and we give you some tools that you'll need to do.
They serve you guys.
That's right.
That's beautiful.
And what a beautiful thing and an honoring thing for them to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
You
That's
know.
so good. So let me ask you. So I've gotten a copy. I've read through. I'm going through the Gospel of John now, and it's beautiful. Like, I mean, that's one of the descriptions I would use. It is a very beautiful translation, and so it just going through a couple pieces. You use terminology in the version that, with a non-native person, they'd be like, what's that? And so just let's if you don't mind, just sharing just some of the, like, you can start with Jesus and anybody else you want to highlight, name of God, things like that. Can you just go through a couple of those for us? And then we can kind of keep rolling.
Well, one of the first things we did was we formed a translation council of 12 from different denominations, Christian backgrounds, and tribal heritages and tribal ancestry. And so Wycliffe identified about nearly 200 words that are key to translating the New Testament. So we got our council together, and we began to go through every one of those words and decide how are we going to translate God.
Yeah.
Okay, so you start with
Not a
God.
small task.
Well, of course, we discovered that the word God isn't an inspired translation. It's an English word that comes probably from a German root somewhere as English came in, and it has no specific. What it means is English is a divine being, so to speak, a
So
God.
it's a relatively generic term.
It's a generic term,
Yeah.
and uh, so we looked at different ways. In a general way, how do Native people speak of the Supreme Being?
Hmm.
So we saw that Great Spirit and Creator are the most common
Yeah.
things you'll hear. Almost any powwow you go to, if they open in a prayer, they'll pray to Creator.
Right.
They'll pray to the Great Spirit,
Hmm.
and so that is a designation, and that's shared by many different tribes now. Sometimes they use the term grandfather, which was one of the terms we didn't use.
Hmm.
Because I wasn't totally, I would have used it, but I wasn't totally in charge. And the council weighed in on different reasons why or why not to do that. So, and then we used other titles for God, like the one above us all. We the giver of life, maker of breath, all these different terminologies that different tribes have used, and we just incorporated them in where they felt right to put
Yeah.
those in for
Yeah.
the Greek word theos. And so then we moved to, okay, we got God, right? We're going to translate God this way.
Yeah.
What about Jesus?
Yeah.
How are we going to say Jesus? And
Without baggage.
without the baggage. And so we
Hey, let
thought,
me stop. I'm going to stop
okay,
you one day. So I've been exposed to some teaching recently of somebody that's worked a lot with Muslims. And
yeah,
so Jesus in Islam is Aisha, or not
Isa.
Isa, sorry, Isa. And so a lot of times as Americans, we think, well, Jesus, it's got magical powers. That word has magical powers in English. And it's like, not to people that speak a different language.
No.
It's going to be Isa, or it's going to be something else. And so sometimes, I mean, we as Americans are so inundated with our own culture, and I would say white Americans, I would say, it's like, okay, you don't touch the name of Jesus. It's like, have you ever read a non-English Bible that doesn't translate Jesus? Like it's
Right.
not. Anyway, I just wanted to say that before you go on.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Matter of fact, the greatest pushback we've gotten is people think that we're trying to change the name of Jesus to something
Right.
else that doesn't work. You can't use that name because that doesn't work. It's the name Jesus.
Right.
Although if you do some research on where that name came from in English,
Yeah.
it's only been around for about 400 years.
Okay.
And the 1611 King James Bible did not use the name Jesus. It used Iesus.
Interesting.
Jesus, which comes from the Greek. It's an actual way to take the Greek word Jesus and put it into an English format, sounding it out. Today we would probably use a Y, Jesus, or something like that.
Yeah.
And it came from the Hebrew Yeshua, of course.
Yeah.
When we went to Madagascar, Jesus was called Jesosi. Jesosi. Or what was the last?
I love that. That makes me so happy because it's like Jesus is not as much in a box as we think he is.
Oh, absolutely. Names are important, but names, it's Jesus, it's God's Son, Creator's own Son, that makes the name Jesus meaningful.
Yes, amen.
It's not the name that makes him meaningful. It's the other way around.
You're preaching. You're preaching to the choir. That is so good.
And so, when was the last time you went to, say, a Mexican restaurant and had Jesus serve you as your waiter?
Right, exactly.
Right? Or Jesus, as the Mexican people would say, Jesus. But we look at, I saw the name tag says Jesus. And other people, another thing that people don't realize is that the name Jesus, or even the name Yeshua from the Hebrew, or Yahashua, was a common name in the time of Jesus. In the Second Temple Judaism, he didn't have an exceptional name. As a matter of fact, the angel said, you shall call his name, the prophecy said, you'll call his name Emmanuel. And then they named him Jesus. Huh? They didn't even listen to the prophecy. The angel said, no, you're going to name him Jesus because Jesus is Emmanuel. And the name Jesus fulfills the meaning of Emmanuel. I believe the angel or God chose the name Jesus because it's of the meaning of the name.
Yeah. What is the meaning of the name?
The name of Jesus is Yeshua, or Yah, the shortened version of Yahweh for the name, the Old Testament Hebrew name for God, and Shua, which is the Hebrew for to be rescued, to be delivered, to be set free. Okay, so Yah sets free, or Yah saves, or some say that Jesus means in standard English, God saves.
Yeah.
So so the meaning of his name was chosen to indicate that this was what he was going to do. This was God coming to rescue human beings from themselves, and to rescue the world. So we, as Native people, we said, our Native people, we have meaning to our names traditionally.
Yeah.
So we chose the meaning of the names in the Bible. Like Jesus becomes creator, sets free, because he will set his people free from their bad hearts and their broken ways.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. That's the reason he has that name and the meaning of the name. So can the name creator sets free save you? Yeah, when it's attached to that person, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, not if it's attached to your waiter.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Amen. Amen to that. You can get your water though. But yeah, I mean, that's so powerful because the power of Jesus's name, or creator sets free, or Yahshua, is the man himself that God sent, and not just the name of, it's sort of like that Sons of Sceva story. Right. So the sons of Sceva, about where they're confronted with the demonic presence, and they basically are told, Paul, I know, Jesus, I know, who are you? You don't even believe the things I know you don't believe this. So I'm going to overwhelm you with my demonic power because you have no belief. You're using magic words that you don't even believe in.
You're trying to use his name magically. Right.
Exactly. And so anyway, that's a side note. But so what did you call the Holy Spirit?
Actually, we just stuck with Holy Spirit.
Great.
Because that's very relatable. Our Native people use the word holy and sacred.
Yeah.
We use spirit. So Holy Spirit was just, why change it when it's already in a good shape?
So I'd really love to get sort of into not only your head, but also those that you worked with around some of the Native beliefs that you believed sort of aligned with sort of biblical teaching or God-revealed teaching in the New Testament. And I know that many tribes have many practices, but there was some commonality, right? Like the Great Spirit, that would be common, or knowing God as creator, very common. So would you say that, what are some other belief systems that you came across different tribes that you said, yeah, this would translate across different tribes? Because a lot of tribes hold this belief, and this belief is you believe to be biblical, or you believe to be based on God's work.
Well, of course, what does it say in the book of Hebrews? If you come to Creator, you must believe that he exists, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him, or work hard at seeking him. In Acts 17, it says, from one blood, the Creator made all the human beings, right? and he established all the different tribes and people groups, ethnicities, and he gave them their very places that they would inhabit. And then it says he did this so that they might seek after him. So Creator placed Native people in this land for the purpose of seeking him. And Native people have been seeking Creator ever since they've been here. Yeah. They've been seeking the Creator. They seek him as a spirit. So there's a commonality right there in the Bible. Jesus said God or Creator is spirit. And those that worship him or serve him must do so in spirit and in truth. Yeah. And so Native people understand there's a spiritual world, and they understand there's a natural world. That's a biblical view. Native people understand there are spirits that are good and there are spirits that are bad. That's a biblical worldview. In my Anishinaabe culture, which I can speak about a little bit, we have 7 sacred teachings from the 7 grandfathers who represent the Great Spirit. And the Bible talks about the 7 spirits in Revelation of God. And so there to me, that's common ground. Okay, yeah. We got 7 spirits, 7 grandfather spirits representing the Creator, and they're teaching about him. They're giving us they gave us ceremonies and prayers and ways of thinking and understanding our relationship to creation, our relationship to the Creator and to one another, and the understanding that this world has there's bad spirits, there's good and bad in the world, and so this idea that when things go wrong, it's not just because something happened in the natural world, it's also because something happened in the spiritual world, because for Native people, the spiritual and natural are not separated. They are connected. So our physical bodies and our spirits are connected, integrated with each other. Spirit affects physical affects spiritual. And so this idea, this worldview is very biblical.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, that there's a spirit, soul, a physical body. They don't necessarily those are like integrated wholes.
And so we have 7 sacred teachings. We have wisdom and love and respect, courage, honesty, humility, and truth. 7 grandfather teachings. All those teachings, most of our ceremonies, I've been told, were to reinforce these 7 sacred teachings. And these 7 sacred teachings complete a circle in the way we are supposed to live in harmony with creation and the people around us, other peoples. And so you have the medicine wheel, or the hoop of life, as Black Elk called it, or you have the circle of life, as the Anishinaabe might call it, circle of life. So that circle of life has a circle and 4 quadrants. So you have an upward and a cross. So you have the spiritual and you have the natural. We relate to the spiritual world and we relate to the natural world, and those things are all integrated in this circle of life that we live. The Creator is like a circle because he has no beginning and no end, just like a circle. Yeah. And so all these ways of seeing and understanding the world are very spiritual and natural, all combined, and really relate well to the traditional Hebrew tribal way of understanding the world.
Yeah. I got first exposed to the concept. There was a book that you may know called Eternity in Their Hearts. It was written by a missionologist named Don Richardson. He was a missionary in, I think, Indonesia or somewhere in that, and he stumbled across this folklore in the tribe that was the perfect match for trying to describe Jesus to the people. So he used the folklore to lead people to Jesus. Then he said, I wonder if God's done this in other places. And so he studied all these missionary biographies or whatever history, and he would discover all these different cultures that God had pre-visited before a missionary saying the name of Jesus or carrying a New Testament ever showed up. And they would have common understanding of things that are very biblical before missionaries show up. And then he went to the native peoples, the First Nations people in the Americas, and he said they had this concept of the that the world is separated into these four segments. And then his analysis was they respond really well to the four spiritual laws. And I was like, that's it? That's all you got? I was so disappointed.
There's so much more.
I was like, that is literally like the word. I mean, I was so like, I love his work and I love the concept. But when he went to the Native Americans, I was like, there is a whole world you haven't even touched. And so, yeah, that's really powerful. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the ceremonies. Ceremonies are very important to Native people. And so can you talk a little bit about maybe some ceremonies that you've come to understand that may have some biblical parallels?
Sure. One of the things that among the Anishinaabe and other tribes also, we have a Swat Lodge. And the Swat Lodge has a lot of meaning to it. It's ceremonial and it's spiritual, it's natural, it all comes together. The Swat Lodge is built usually out of branches, was traditionally built out of branches, and it made a dome shape, and then that dome was covered with animal skins and different things, and there was put a door, a very small door that you would enter into this Swat Lodge that had earth under it. And so the Swat Lodge was to go in and pray. It was a place of prayer, and it was a place of seeking spiritual things. And it was reconnecting to our origins as human beings. Where do we come from? We come out of the earth. Okay, we're earth beings, and of course, biblically, Adam was made from the clay, from the ground. Okay, his name actually means like red clay or red dirt or dirt man, and so we have this Swat Lodge, and in the Swat Lodge, we seek purification. Now, why would we want to be pure? The very idea of seeking to be pure means that somehow we've gotten impure. Okay, so that concept of impurity and purity is a biblical concept.
Yeah,
and it's also a native concept. So that's common ground.
Yeah.
And so the Swat Lodge was a way to pray. We had sacred herbs that we used to pray with, sweetgrass and cedar and tobacco and the
sage.
Yes, the sage. The sage was primarily for purification.
Yeah.
I put it in the wrong order. That's why I forgot sage at the end. but and so these ways of praying with smoke, okay? Is praying with smoke and incense a biblical idea? Yes. You can find it in the Old Testament and you can find it in the New Testament. In the book of Revelation, it talks about the smoke going up from the altar in heaven, and that the prayers of the holy people of God are going up with the smoke to the Creator. In our Anishinaabe way of praying, we pray with smoke, and the smoke, we say, as the smoke goes up with our prayers, the blessings come down.
Yeah. And
so that idea, the Swat Lodge, it's all ceremonial. We have these rocks we heat very hot. We consider these rocks to be older than us. We feel like these rocks have been here since the beginning of the world, and so they they have, in a sense, they have this history within them. And when we heat them and they let out this heat to purify us, we're connecting to that original creation event. And also when we're in the Swat Lodge, we call it entering back into our mother's womb, to be, in a sense, born over again. So is that concept a biblical concept? Jesus actually taught Nicodemus that it was, even though Nicodemus struggled with that one.
Yeah.
Can a person go back and be born in their mother's womb and be born over again? So, but the idea with the Anishinaabe and the Swat Lodge is that you're reconnecting to the earth. That's our original mother. Yeah. Okay, because we came out of the ground. We're dirt people, and the earth is like a mother. Yeah. It's like our mother in that it is the mother of our physical bodies. And so those are, all these ceremonies, the whole purpose of them was to bring harmony and balance back again. It was because we knew we couldn't do it ourselves. We knew we needed help from the spirit world or from the Creator. We needed help to be who we were supposed to be and created to be. So we were crying out, seeking for help from the spirit world where the Creator is, and trusting that He would help us in this process. And so I don't see anything unbiblical about that.
Do you find, so some of the, just a quick thought, so some of the practices, and let's just use the mother's womb one, that's a good specific one. So with Jesus, do you find that there are some ceremonies that get fulfilled or take on a new meaning?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Do you have an example of that? Or
I just gave you an example with the Swat Lodge.
Yeah.
Jesus fulfills that birthing, that new birth that we need, and that we're seeking after. He becomes the human who first experienced, as a human, he experienced this death and coming to life again, and having this resurrection that gave him powers and a new thing as a human being. He already had those things as God, but he didn't have them at all as human yet. And now he has all those things as a human, and then he gives us his spirit so that we can cooperate with him and experience the same thing he experienced. And so that's fulfilled. That doesn't mean we won't do a Swat Lodge again.
No, it's a connection. Like my take on it, like I've yet to do one, and I will be doing one at some point. And and it's really, from my perspective, it's a way to connect with God. It's just a different way to connect with God. Like, to me, in a Eurocentric sort of church-centric world, you got the red carpet, you got the altar with the little kneeling pad and the pews, and that's where you connect with God. You're like, that is so cultural. You don't even have an idea of how cultural that is. But people say, no, that's the godly place. And you're like,
that's right. And another way we connect with God in church is by singing together.
Sure.
And so that we sing and we express our faith in words and in melodies. And that's true for Native people too. We had our songs are prayers. When you hear that drum and the hey, 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 we don't even always know what words we're singing. Unless we go into our language, we're just expressing something from deep in our spirits to the Creator. And we know that they're ancient words to give thanks with. That's what a Hopi elder told me. They're ancient words we give thanks with. We don't know what they mean anymore, some of these words, but they're words of thanksgiving. So I, as a believer in Jesus, I can connect with Creator through a Swat Lodge, through a drum song, and all these things. The focus changes a little. Because now we're in one sense, the Creator has come down to us, and now he's with us in a way he wasn't with us before. Okay. And so that's the fulfillment part. So he doesn't want us to take away our cultures, our sweat lodges, but he does want to complete them and actually add to them good things.
Hmm. So there's a ceremony I want to explore with you,
Sure.
and that's the naming ceremony. Thinking about it from a kind of biblical, historical standpoint, the value of names, the value of receiving a name. Can you just, what are your thoughts on the naming ceremonies? And different tribes have different traditions. You have the vision quest, but then that's a little bit of a naming ceremony, but then you have formal naming ceremonies later. And yeah, just your thoughts on
Yeah,
that.
the vision quest might be combined with giving a person a new name after the quest.
Okay.
And so it's a coming of age kind of ceremony, the vision quest.
Yeah.
And so the act of naming is very powerful. The first thing Moses wanted to know was what? From God. What do you want to know?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know.
Who should I say is sending me?
Oh, I'm thinking. Oh, sorry.
What's your name?
Thank you. Yes. Man, I really failed on that. I should have had that one. I had Noah in my head. I'm thinking Vision Quest and animals, and I thought you said Noah, and I'm like, I don't know what Noah is.
Noah, Moses.
Moses, yes.
Yes. So anyway, and so what did Creator say to Moses? He said, I am that I am, or I will be what I will be. Tell them I am sent you, because he's so much, his name is bigger than we can in some ways relate to. It's such a thing, and sometimes if you know somebody's name, you think you might have some kind of power over them. That was an ancient way of thinking, and God, nobody's going to have the power of the Creator. He's going to be what he is, and nothing can change who he is or what he is. But so naming is so important biblically. Abraham is a good example. His name was Abram before he came to know the Creator, and Abram means basically honored father.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then when the Creator made the covenant with Abram, he gave him a new name, father of many nations, Abraham. And so his purpose was integrated into his name. Mm. Native naming is very similar. You're not always given just one name. Sometimes you receive a name or several names at birth, depending on your tribe. For the Anishinaabe people, you don't exist to the spirit world until you have a name. Hmm. So as soon as you're given your name, that name is spoken in all the directions and introduces the whole spirit world to who you are. Hello, this is who I am. Yeah. And now you have a connection to the spirit world through a name, through your name. Yeah. Identifying who you are. A name, again, is identification with who you are. And so that name can have purpose in it. If you were born in a certain clan, that name will probably be a similar name to other names in the clan that have to do with the purpose of your clan. Just like the tribes of Israel, if you were born into the Levite tribe, that's the priestly tribe. Yeah. Nobody else could be priests except the Levite tribe. Well, Native people, we have different tribal clans, and you have to, if you're born into a certain clan, you might be a leader, a chief. Yeah. They come out of that clan, or you might be have some other role within the tribe, and so naming helps you identify and wear that purpose, and so The naming ceremony, I received a naming ceremony, two of them actually. And, and so I was, when I was named, my name was spoken in all the directions, my new name. And so I was given a new name. I have my name, Terry Wildman in Dishnakaz. Terry Wildman is my name. That's the name I was given at my birth. I honor that name. I like being a wild man.
That's a great name.
I've looked up the meaning of Terry, and depending on the root you want to go back to, it can mean harvester, reaper. It can also mean smooth and polished one. But the names I was given by two of my mentors, Casey Church was one of my mentors who gave me a naming ceremony and gave me a name, and Brian John from the Ojibwe gave me a name later on. So I combined both those names. So Casey gave me the name Good, or actually he gave me the name Great Thunder, or Voice of Great Thunder. And Gitchi Animiki, Voice of Great Thunder. And then I was given the name Good Medicine Spirit. So Voice of Great Thunder with a Good Medicine Spirit becomes my native name that I am living out as a native person. That's how I identify myself as a native person. And I often have messed up because in these interviews I should give you my name, my native name, besides my birth name.
Having had that, and do you believe that you can see kind of God at work through the native name in your life?
Absolutely.
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, one of the things is Casey prayed for 1.5 years for my name. So don't, if you want to, if you're going to go through a naming ceremony, you're going to have to wait a long time. Because the person praying doesn't just take it lightly. It's a very sacred task to give a name. And so, yes, but he saw things in me already. He saw this voice that Creator was giving me. And so he said, your voice of great thunder, great thunder being the Creator. He said, but he also reminded me, he says, but at home, you're just big thunder, because you're not supposed to have a big head about this, and so there's always that humor side, of course. I love it. So I do see that happening. Right now, I'm in a season where Creator has given me a voice through this First Nation version. That I've been speaking to thousands and thousands and thousands of people through these podcasts. I've had 3 or 4 podcasts a week for 2 months now. Almost 3 months, because I started the podcast before it was released. And I get to speak to a lot of people in Canada. I was on television, spoke to a lot of people. So yes, I'm not bragging. I'm just saying,
you're saying
it's a fulfillment of the meaning of that name, a voice of great thunder. But also, I have good medicine spirit. And so one of the things that people have told me without me bringing it up, Terry, I really like your spirit. I like the way you present. I like the way you share. You talk about really tough things, but there's a grace about what you share. And so I see that also as a fulfillment of that name. And so by owning that name and accepting that name and making it part of who I am, Creator uses that name to fulfill purposes in my life. How's that?
That's powerful, and I love it. So let's end with this, because I just, my audience is not all natives, and so there's a concept of good medicine, right? I know what you're talking about, but can you maybe describe what that means to a native person when you say good medicine?
Well, good medicine is really, the bottom line is, it's anything that's helps make you better. Okay. So it could be an herb. It could be a kind of food you eat. food is good medicine. Certain foods are good medicine.
Mhm.
It could be a kind of prayer. That prayer is good medicine. It means it brings blessing to me. It brings um, fruitfulness to me. It brings good things. So good medicine is and bad medicine would be those things that harm us.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, and so medicine just becomes a word for like medicine can be a cure.
Yeah.
Like we use medicine in our Western world, it helps your body heal itself sometimes, or it brings healing to your body, or it sets up a healing situation. And that's what we did with our herbs and our prayers. We were praying and setting up a spiritual way to connect, to get our bodies to respond to the good things the Creator has for us.
Yeah, and I think I would just my thought of good medicine is that it's also spiritual.
Yeah, oh
Jesus'
yes,
words
absolutely.
are good medicine.
Hmm.
God's words are good medicine. They are good for your soul. They're good for your body. And
Laughter is good medicine.
exactly. Yeah,
Proverbs.
exactly. Yeah, that's right. Hey, it's been a real honor to have you on. And I'm sorry, I want to call you Big Thunder because that's what made me laugh. The voice of, tell me, say your name again. It's Good Medicine Spirit. And what was the other one?
um, the voice of the great thunder with a good medicine
Yes,
spirit.
thank you. Voice of the Great Thunder. And if people want to follow up and learn more about the translation and or learn more about you, is there a website they should go to? Or
Yes, the best thing is just go to firstnationsversion.com, and you can connect to the translation there. You can read about how it was done. You can see where you can buy it from if you want to buy it.
yeah.
You can check out our music that's on there. It's all there. So uh, go there, firstnationsversion.com.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm definitely going to be checking out your music.
All right. Miigwech Isindawiyeg means thank you for listening.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to the podcast. Hey, if you did like it, it would be really helpful if you want to send us a review over on iTunes. That would be really cool. And if you want to connect, go over to Instagram, search Troy Mangum or the Kindling Fire, and we can connect there. And that would be a great way to kind of stay in touch. I am doing a YouTube channel, so we do video formats of these podcasts, and we'd love to have you look there. Okay, guys, until next time, be awesome.